I can remember nightclubs that an owner would come in from, Chicago or New York or Philadelphia, and they wanted to open up a club. Now, they never operated a nightclub before. They don't know nothing about a restaurant, but they wanted to be there. They wanted to be in the scene.
I've seen in a movie, they would show up with a brown paper bag and say, okay, build us a nightclub. And a friend of mine who was a builder and used to work with these guys in New York was one of the main guys down there who was a construction guy.
My niche was designing, building nightclubs for other people, and letting them run them and do them, so and not having the headache.
So you had the construction guy, you had the artist, you had certain people that were key people already entrenched in South Beach and were cool, hip, good-looking people. So they already had an in, so it was a no-brainer. All you need to do is find a space. I mean, we used to build clubs in like a month.
You know what I've learned over the years? That it's not about the club you build. It's about who builds it and who. It's about the people who run it. The Opium Group. I go back to the Milans. They've developed a trust in the marketplace for their crowd. There's a crowd that loves what they do, and it's a growing crowd, believe it or not, that Models and Bottles crowd. They love what they do, they trust them, so they open a place, and yes, they open beautiful places. But it really isn't about that. People are going there because they trust them, and because they know that party, and that's what they're looking for.
Everybody was here to survive in paradise somehow. It's like, wow, we love it here, it's great, there's girls, there's everything you want, water, sand, everything you want. But how am I going to make money? How am I going to make New York money?
A different group, a group without that trust in the marketplace and without a core crowd to come in and to attract other people could open that same club and have absolutely no success with it. And that's what this market is. It's, you see it all the time in restaurants. We have restaurants that are amazing and great service and serve fabulous food, and they fail. And then you have a place next door that has mediocre service and okay food, but it has the trendy crowd behind it and the right people, and it's packed every night. And that's a lot of what this market is about. So these people think, oh, it's South Beach, I can come down there, I spend a bunch of money building a club and they'll come. It's not how it works. It's not.
So the next thing was basically bars, nightclubs was the answer, because you can get into them pretty cheap. And everybody was really pumped up on doing it.
It was a monthly occurrence where people would just drop hundreds of thousands of dollars, never even be able to open up, or closed within 3 months after they opened.
This was the hotbed in the whole country for design, and because there was so many nightclubs going on that I got into building and became relationships with every club owner there was, who are the biggest club owners today. They all got their start in Miami. From Vegas to New York to, South America, everybody had started here at some point or another as a promoter, as an owner, as an investor, but they all, they cut their teeth here, and most of these people I've dealt with.
Are you kidding me? We have the longest list of wannabe nightlife impresarios, and it used to be a joke, we'd joke about these spaces and these people opening, and we watch them put money into it. And look, I've done business with them.
But it was good to see that this was the hotbed at that time. If you can make it here, basically you can make it anywhere. This was the hardest place because there was places popping up every week. There was a new opening, and these guys are against you, and these people are stealing your meter off your building because you had a busy night. It was all crazy stuff. When I first opened, the rival club, I didn't know how to had enemies. Stuffed the girls' toilets with whatever, and flooded out the whole place the first night, So my first night I was cleaning up shit. So that was my opening night, it was really glamorous. But, I just saw that there was a great value here, and this was the place that was building and building. And, I kind of, started from there, and which is where 22 years later, So I'm still doing it, and a lot of people that work with me are still doing it 22 years later also, who I gave their start as like 18-year-olds, as a bar back, whatever, and you just see how all these people, are making a living from where they started down here, which is kind of satisfying, I guess.
I remember one place called the Vault. They spent about $360,000 renovating the place and ran out of money and never opened. That happened like all the time in South Beach at that time.
When I hired people in my place, it was an extension of myself. You were coming into my house, basically, and it was Andy's house, and the people who worked there would people I would, if you were a jerk, I wouldn't want to deal with you, so you wouldn't work there. And I believe that was the right way that the businesses were run back then. That all the different personalities here had, there's the South France flair, from Eric Omar's. He had his way. He hired really cool people, and they weren't jerks. I hired cool people. We used to take them on outings on boats, and have everybody had that. And then the other element came in. It was just about, fuck you, pay me. You want to get in? Fuck you. It was a big fuck you, and that's where, like I was saying before, that's where I saw things getting ugly and bad.
I opened a club downtown for a guy called Nocturnal. And he was a guy who'd had some success in the telecom business and wanted to open a club. And I begged him. I said, you're crazy. He wanted ostrich skin bars and, fountains and all this. And I said, look, let's paint the room black, put in a sound system, and open a damn nightclub. No, I want this and that. He wound up spending almost $15 million opening a place that we could have done for 4, maybe 5. And by the end of it, had bankrupted his telecom company, had no money, and had to borrow money to finish the place. And that's the tale. That happens all the time. I mean, the past is littered with guys. You look at just one after another. I can't remember the guy's name. Sean Lewis, thank you. He'd made some money in the technology industry and came down here and was going to buy every club on South Beach.
And one of the things that tried to make it commercial was a guy named Sean Lewis, who had become worth a couple $100 million on selling his company to Level 3 in stock. And he decided he was going to, every 200 to 300 feet, have a club.
Yeah, well, the thing was this. I mean, with the models, when everybody got into business here, even Gary James and all the guys, from Rebar, we got into business solely there was a couple of reasons how we would make money and raise money. First, there was these other young doctors here, lawyers and these professionals. We had a doctor he worked 3 nights in a row, or this nice little Jewish kid who, has a black credit card, but he has no friends. You know what? We said, give us $25,000 each. We'll open a bar, because you could open a bar for $100,000. You get them and guess what? You say you own a bar, you get to get in every night, and you're gonna spend the money anyway and get abused. You might as well just be part of something. And that was our formula, and that worked for everybody. That was the formula. And then, we give people social lives. That was the whole basis of opening these bars. A, I wanted to make money, and B, I'm gonna take your money, but I'm gonna give you a social life.
And I think he maybe got 1 or 2 of them open, wound up spending all of his money, wound up in debt, and it was a common story. We saw it all the time, and you'd think that these people would learn from the other people, and they never did, and they still don't. That still happens every day in this market, every day. It's a dreamer's market.
And everything went from little bars, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square feet, 5,000 was kind of big, into everything was clubs now. Mansion, this place, everything was 20,000, paid for bottles. If you don't have a bottle, you're not getting in. You could used to walk up to a place, and just walk in and say, it was everybody knew everybody, and you could just walk into places. Now it was a machine.
We opened up Chaos in the old Le Bon's Douche, 753 Washington. And that place was opened up for $150,000 on credit cards.
South Beach is reversing back to the format, not necessarily the people, but there are people looking for that right now, that have never experienced it. They heard about it, but never experienced it. I think in the near future, it's going to get back to that, because you can't do these big boxes anymore, especially on the beach.
Oh, somebody opens up a bar and they're like, we're going to redefine nightlife in South Beach, and we're going to reposition, and you're just kind of like, yeah, right. You're gonna redefine how fast you open and close is what you're gonna do.
Then they start taxing you. If we saw a tax, this tax, I'm like, so many taxes. Like you were losing 30% before you even made your money. You were paying out 30%. So there's really no sense in us opening more bars, more clubs, unless it was a corporate thing. And they scared all the small bars to put everybody out of business, basically. They didn't help any of this whole nightlife thing. They didn't unify anybody. And instead, they just fought against everybody. And they were trying to make this into a Fort Lauderdale, I guess, which was never going to happen. And everything went up from the, they started doubling parking impact, this, now you can have a table outside your place, they were charging you. So it became really, really hard to do business, and my business suffered because of that, and a lot of people the beach stopped growing.
And including the liquor order at the time. And we did an entire basic redressing of the place, and we came up with these giant red drapes because we could get them at a really low discount. I remember Tony Theodore saying to me, yeah, what do you think? We're going to have red drapes here. And I said, okay, why red? He goes, because we're going to get them really cheap.
Doing really well, making 30-40% to making 5% because everything rolls around me. The water's high. Soon it's going to just start flowing in, and I got shut down. I'm lucky because I made a deal early on, but most people didn't make those deals.
Here, you're lucky you get 2 years out of a club, and you're a genius. Back then, it was like these clubs, like 6 years out of Crowbar was just mayhem and packed every night that they were open.
Now, you see people coming in, closing, because they still have big eyes and big hopes,
There were cool crowds in South Beach. And if they went to a party, people knew they went to a party and they wanted to be at that party because that was the party to be at. And so you wanted to be in with that crowd, and they'd show up at your door and you'd give them drinks all night. And they knew they could come to your place and get free drinks.
South Beach was kind of built on a bartering system. Back then, you didn't pay for drinks, and bartenders that came to your bar didn't pay for drinks either.
I don't know how they made money because everyone was giving everybody free drinks.
That's what built the community and what built the kind of the friendships that I think we have today.
So let's talk about free drinks. Who, what, when, where, why should somebody get a free drink, and who has really the right to offer a free drink, which is really only one person in the club, the owner. Unless the owner gives that right or that privilege through a drink ticket or through a comp card that says to their bar staff, go ahead, give away drinks, because you have to give away drinks. Now, who gets the drink is a different story, or what they get, or how much they get, or whether they're entitled to drink for free or not. That's all in somebody's mind, because it all affects the bottom line. But you have to give away drinks because you do. I don't know whoever said you did, but you do. To keep people happy. Some people can't afford to go out. Some people spend their whole week to earn enough money to spend one night out. And that, is $20 at the door or $30 at the door. They're not the free person that comes in, but that's the person that actually pays for the free drink. And the people that step up in front of them expecting their drink, not realizing that that's the guy that's going to actually cover the bills. And if the bartender's not really kind of like a little bit like up on what's going on for the house, and they look and they serve the free drink person, that free drink person may be the person that brought the other person because they needed to have some type of bait. Are your free drinkers bait? Yeah. They're the ones that have fun at the party. There's certain ones of us that don't have to dress up. Doesn't matter what you're wearing, you're going to get in. You don't have, you're not worried about, it's just rank and file.
You'd have all the club owners that would come in and they would frequent every bar from time to time. And we, as the main bars, or the guys who would post up and run the anchor shifts, which was like either the main station would be the service station with the waitresses, or the corners, those were your anchor stations, and you would put your best bartenders there. And your best bartender had to know who everybody was in South Beach, and who your paying customers were and who your non-paying customers were. All that at the same time, yet take care of bottle service. But that being said, they would send them to me, and and I would take care of the club owners and so on, and the people who were important to these club owners, and no one paid. However, these club owners would go to their clubs and they wouldn't pay there, but it was our job to know who was who and who wasn't who, and keep it within a certain bar tab, and make sure that we continue to ring what we would normally ring, which was $6,000 to $8,000 a night.
Back in our day, there was no such thing as a VIP room, because the club was the VIP room.
All these clubs had like 5 VIPs. V and VIP, VPP everywhere.
And if you didn't look good, if you weren't fabulous, if you weren't famous, if you weren't special, you go to the old man bar. Yeah. You know. And New York was the same way. There was no such thing as a gay club or a straight club. You either went to the old man bar, the Irish joints, or you went to a nightclub. And if you were going to a nightclub, you went in fully well knowing, hey, I'm going to be around gay people, straight people, transsexuals, freaks, midgets, monkeys, whatever. I mean, that was the beauty of it.
Velvet rub after velvet rub. But these people that look at you, down at you, like they opening the velvet rub to go to heaven.
Everything's so segregated, and so like VIP section, this, that, whatever, you have to have this kind of band to get into this area. It's changed.
Honey, you are a bouncer. You're a fat, tall, bald bouncer. That's all you are. And this is not a VIP.
They've just turned into places for people flashing $100 bills. Giant watches and giant tits and.
It was horrible. It was a VIP town.
All the things that money can buy, but no style and no coolness.
But it was very funny to go everywhere we went was a VIP, like 5 VIP rooms in the thing, and one thought that they were more VIP than the other.
I say there's 3 kinds of owners. The first is the type that likes to say, I own this place. This is my nightclub. Please come in, let me buy you a drink. This is my club. It's more ego-based. Second type of owner that I've worked for, I call them the dick wetter. This is my nightclub. Come inside. Let me buy you a drink. Suck my dick. Come to my nightclub. Look how beautiful it is. Sit down, have a drink, have 2 drinks, have 3 drinks. Suck my dick. Then there's the third kind of owner that actually understands that there's a business, that there's a responsibility that comes with having a nightclub, owning a license, and operating a business where you bring more than one person to get inebriated, have a good time, and you have to hope that you're responsible enough to get them home safely. Most owners are a blend of the 3, and I've been fortunate to work for a lot of them. Where I think I differed as a manager was I was able to walk up to somebody who was standing at the door for 7 or 8 hours waiting to get in and say to them, hey, look, Max Club Deuce is right around the corner, or fit them into a bar that they're going to get into, because they're not going to get into this one. But the person standing next to them is going to walk right past them, and so is the next person, and the next person, and the next person, because they're it. They have something within them, or they've gotten to some level, or they know the right guy that permits them just that Gilbert just says, hey, look, move. And you see the spreading of a group of people waiting to get in that don't understand, get in line, it's like, yeah, and you walk right in. I think one thing I learned it was Louis Canales at Semper's that taught me, it doesn't matter what the person's wearing, it's how they wear it.
Well, South Beach door policy, back in the 90s, door gods, I go back to Gilbert, one of the original door gods of Miami Beach, where you could be as flamboyant as outrageous, but you were feared, you were loathed, and you were loved. Everybody needed to know who you were, and whether you were Kitty Meow at the door of Paragon, or Joe over at the door at Warsaw, or Greg and Nicole over at Groovejet, you needed to make sure you knew who owned the venue, who was the doorman, because they were your key to having a good night. And over the years, it has changed so drastic, because buying a bottle was a definition of a VIP back in the early 90s. Meant you had money, we didn't force it on you, you bought it because you wanted it. Now we have this, very strict approach at front doors that, we're better than you and you need to pay through the nose in order to get in, and that's wrong. I think it hurts our city, it hurts our reputation, and it worked back in look good and have the right attitude, and you will walk right in by any experienced and intelligent doorman. If not, you're dodging a bullet, just stay out of there.
Nowadays, there's all this gouging and hitting you over the head and all this trickery. You walk up and down Ocean Drive, and they say, "Here, please sit down." There's a 2-for-1. You get this big old drink, and you're loving it. And you this big old pina colada with this thing stuck in it, and you're having the time of your life. 2-for-1, and you get the bill, and it's $100. You're like, "What the hell happened here? I just had a 2-for-1 drink, and this bill comes, and it's $100." All this trickery. If you don't pay, they call the cops on you. That's not the South Beach I remember. The South Beach I remember was you didn't have to sell anything. You didn't have to put these little robots out in front of your store or in front of your venue to come on in. It sold itself. Your bartenders got you there. Your bartenders got the clientele there because of who they were and what they did. And on their days off, they would go out and promote their place. And you know that was the bartender who worked over at the Kitchen Club, or that was the bartender that worked over at this club. And you would just make this name for yourself, and everybody would follow you. You would be nice, and they wouldn't charge you, and you wouldn't charge them. And it was an ongoing thing. And the club never lost any money, or the establishment didn't lose any money, and everyone was happy.
To have a 15-year-old girl going into a club because she's 18, that is wrong. And again, it's a parenting problem, as Paul said. But unfortunately, parents have advocated that responsibility, and it falls at times upon our shoulders.
Then the laws started getting enforced, and they started stopping people from going into the clubs that were under 21. And that really, the underage really helped give the energy. I've never seen a city, in any great city, that could ever have a thriving nightlife that had to enforce 21 and over, because when you're 17 and you're 18, that's when you're in your most anarchist and your most creative level of what you're wearing. You don't have to worry about what you're working in. You don't really care. So that young energy really, really fueled South Beach, because it wasn't just a 21 and over. The model scene, I mean, the models are not 21 and over in that scene. The cover models weren't 21, and the people Ingrid or that Madonna was hanging out with were not 21. No one, it was not even in our vocabulary about 21 and over.
You know, what the developers did, what the fashion industry brought, the celebrities moving, and then us, we got lucky. We got to entertain all these people, you know, not very difficult. You've got thousands of like beautiful models, you've got hundreds of celebrities, and where are these people going to go at night? So you kind of dictate, you know, what you're feeling at the time is what's happening. Today you have to plan something. You have to be like, which DJ should we hire and which DJ will draw more people? Back then it was like, you know, you look at a bunch of red flowers, and if you want to do a red flower party, it's a red flower party. And that's what you get, and everybody's wearing red flowers, and everybody's super happy about it. And that's kind of how it grew, South Beach, in an example. It was very organic. It was from the heart. You know, you read a poem, you put the poem in a projection on the screen, and that's the poem for everybody to see for the night. It was easy. You just skateboard down Ocean Drive, and there was, you know, all these beautiful people that had just like heard about it and were just like landing, and there was like really nowhere to go. So it wasn't like there was a magazine that was telling them to go somewhere at the time, or it wasn't like there was websites telling you what to do. There was a kid on a skateboard that said, "Here, this is where you guys should go." Like, oh, cool, let's go.
You know, these guys were very creative. I mean, they put every bit of effort into promotions. Everybody was involved. You know, there was we didn't have email to send out promotions. It was, you were sending things via fax. You were hand delivered, you know, promoting things on the beach. And it wasn't just a flyer. There was T-shirts, there was stickers. You know, I think every parking meter and stop sign and was probably stickered up at one point. I think even one point I heard Chris Pacello's car might have gotten a sticker on it by somebody else, and that didn't go over too well. But there was a lot of little gimmicky promotions, like because the night was called Basement, so there was these little mints, that were passed out, Tic Tacs. They were all relabeled. There was hats. There was just a non-traditional type of promotion for promoting a party, and people got really involved with it.
The opening night invite was an ostrich egg stuffed in a crate, a wooden crate, wrapped in straw. You had to open up the wooden crate, take the straw out, and take this ostrich egg, which was about this big, crack it open, and the invite was inside saying the rebirth of Cameo Crowbar. Like, people don't do things like that anymore. That invite was $16,000. And Crowbar was one of the hottest clubs for like 6 years. In a club that size, it just doesn't happen anymore.
And the invitation would go with the party. I did the little pumpkin, I did the lollipop, I did the condom. So all those little things stood out because people would collect them at some point. They started collecting the invitation, and they'd be like, oh, I want the one for next week. So that was also what was intriguing, interesting to make them come back.
I've traced your footprints.
The only guy passing out flyers on South Beach that day. That was me. They called me the flyer boy, the boomerang boy, And they was like, "Where's your box?" That was the joke. But think about it. 5 years later, how many people were passing out flyers on the street? To a point that they had to ban it because it was everywhere you looked. You had flyers on the floor. So it started from
hand to hand to just going on the floor.
Yeah, from hand to hand. And I was trying to do it the right, conscious way. Never just give a flyer without saying something. That's how I would train people. I would say, you always got to say something. Tonight, or, the boomerang, whatever you're going to say, you got to connect with people. It's not just a flyer, and that's how I used to train the promoters. But then it became just taking a case of flyer, dumping into the trash. You know what I'm saying? That's how far it went. And that's how it was. People just were getting little money just to pass out flyers, and it became out of control.
One of the things that I guess I was best known for here was beverage management, and to have a license here is a privilege. They pretty much, the rooms are all the same, and the operators who would come in and rent the rooms from the different landowners were the quote unquote known owners. But there were, you have a property and then you have a liquor license. You can buy a liquor license from somebody else, like a house. You can mortgage it. It's to the point where you can pay monthly. There were several key players. I think the biggest was a gentleman named Cy Shadroff.
Cy Shadroff became a great friend of mine. Now here's a guy that those of you who know who Cy Shadroff was, he was a liquor license attorney with connections to Las Vegas. A gentleman, but a connected man. Connected to Steve Wynn at the Mirage in Vegas, and he was the first one that started a movement to bring casinos into Miami Beach, and actually forced some referendums that were voted down at that particular time. But if it wasn't for Cy Shadroff, there would not be gambling in Miami now. I got my liquor license from him at the Tropics International that I owned at the Edison Hotel in the 80s, and I got my liquor license from him at Rose's Bar and Lounge in the 90s. This man lived his entire life up in Sky Lake, up in North Miami. Had a, chauffeur driver, was slick. but a real gentleman, but nobody to fool around with. He was just an amazing person. He helped us out in many, many ways. Whenever I got into a scrape, Cy would get me out of it.
Rough. Cy penned or helped pen the Responsible Vendors Act, which is the governing agent of how we responsibly vend alcohol. Cy was the man. If you wanted to get a liquor license, you went to Cy. Later on, after Cy retired, Lou Terminello, which is presently the gentleman, if you want to get a liquor license, that's who you go to. He is probably the most knowledgeable because he worked for Cy for years and then basically took over his practice. Responsible Vendors, I believe, is probably still run by Lori Shadroff.
So what happened to South Beach as it grew, what happened was that a lot of the people in the small bars that worked out really well started to fade away and disappear with all the big clubs coming in, all the corporate people coming in, pushing all these new venues. And it's separated from the locals meeting at these little spots between 6th and 7th on Washington to these little bars here and there, to now like the big clubs, the big venues where everyone wanted, cover at the door and wanted you to spend this much to get in. Just changed the whole formula of how things in South Beach really started.